Hey, what's up? I'm Chris. Welcome to Small Time Hobby Shop. I've been building a table of terrain for Mordheim, and I decided I wanted to try my hand at sculpting and casting my own windows. So I sculpted a simple window, and I tested out 4 different mold making materials to see which one I liked best. I'll quickly show you the process for each one, then at the end of the video I'll go through all the pros and cons so you can decide which one would be best for your needs. Let's get into it. Up first, this stuff's called Oyumaru. I'm pretty sure it's Japanese, but that also might just be because it sounds like a name of a villain from Naruto or something. This is a thermoplastic, which is really cool. They're just these little sort of plastic bars. They feel sort of like wax. All you have to do is put some of the pieces in boiling water for 3 or 4 minutes, and it heats up and it gets really pliable and squishy. And then all you do while it's still hot is you smush it onto whatever you're trying to make a mold of, trying to get it in, all the little cracks and crevices. And then you wait 5 minutes until it cools down, and it leaves you with a pretty decent mold. It's extremely easy to use, and it's reusable. So after you're done using this mold for however many times you want, you just do this process over again. You can melt it down again in hot water, and you can reuse it. Up next is silicone putty. Normally silicone starts out in liquid form and you combine 2 liquids in order to make some sort of, magic chemical reaction that then winds up with a solid. This is putty, so it's silicone, but you just take equal amounts by weight of the white part and the blue part, and you smush them together for a couple of minutes until the color is uniform. I have read that using gloves can cause this to not cure correctly. I don't know. I didn't use gloves, obviously. I think it's fine, but I'm also stupid, so I don't know if it's fine. I'm still alive and it's been about a week, so you know that it won't immediately kill you if you do it without gloves. But use gloves, maybe? I don't know. I haven't tried it with gloves, so I don't know if that's true that it doesn't cure, but whatever. So just like the Oyumaru, you just then smush this on. The package recommended that you start with a thin layer that you smush on and then put a thicker layer on for kind of stability, which I did here. This is really pliable. It's softer than the Oyumaru, so it feels like you can really get in the cracks and everything. I waited about 30 minutes and it still felt a little bit squishy, so I actually wound up waiting about an hour, which was more than the directions recommended, but after an hour it felt pretty well cured. And then it was, pretty easy to demold all of these pieces. A little bit got under them, but that's no problem. And it made a really nice cast of them. There's, a couple of air bubbles and things like that I might have been able to get out with some more work, I don't know, but for my uses, it works really well. The next 2 mold making materials require you to make a little, what do you call it? What is this? A thing to pour liquid into. Is there a word for that? And if so, what is it? I'm gonna say there is not a word for that. No one has ever figured out what that word should be. So you are welcome in the comments to let me know what word that should be. So I started by sticking everything down with double-sided tape just so that it doesn't float up when I pour the liquid mold stuff in. And then I used a ton of hot glue, both to put the sides together, and then also I ran a bead of hot glue to seal it just to make sure that none of the liquid leaked out. So this one is silicone rubber. I don't know anything about this brand. I just got an easy one off Amazon that seemed like it didn't require a pressure pot because I'm not gonna do any of that stuff. So I have no idea if this is a good brand or a bad brand, but for my uses, it worked just fine. So you just combine equal amounts by weight of the A and the B part, and then you mix them together very, very, very well. I've heard that it's very important that you mix them together well, so I did mix them together well. And so you mix and you mix and you mix and you mix, and you know it's done when you feel like you've mixed a whole lot, and then you continued mixing for a long time, and then you feel like it's done. So I tried to pour a very thin stream from up high just to reduce the amount of bubbles. This brand of silicone says that it degasses on its own where all the little bubbles come up to the surface. Part of that is that it takes 3 or 4 hours to set, which I think the faster curing ones aren't as good at degassing. So then after 4 hours, I demolded it, which was fine. It came off fine. You see, you can look. This looks fine. Of course, the thing that you put your mold in, which we've already established there is no word for, is gonna be sacrificial. You're probably gonna have to rip that apart, so don't use anything that you would care about ripping apart. But aside from that, the molds came off really, really easily. There were no sticking issues. This layer, it kind of got a little bit under the tape. So there was a very, very, very thin layer of silicone that caused my original sculpts to break, which was no problem for me because I can just use them as ruins and I already have the mold. And this last one, I made another one of the thing that shall not be named. This time I used, instead of the XPS foam on the sides, I used cardboard that I put some packing tape over just so that it wasn't porous, and did the exact same thing. Just hot glued the sides, then used a whole bunch of hot glue to run a bead around all of the seams so that nothing would leak out, and it worked great. Since the silicone mold broke up some of my window molds, which I could have glued back together very easily, but I figured, hey, now I've got cool ruined windows that I'll make a mold of because I clearly already have a bunch of molds of the exact same thing. So this is a product called Silly Knot. I have never heard of it, but it seemed interesting. It was cheap and I got it on Amazon and I'm testing stuff, so I figured, why not test it? This is like the Oyumaru reusable, where all you do is just cut some of these pieces off and then you microwave them in like 10-second intervals until it melts. It took like about a minute for it to melt. It became a liquid that you pour on then just like silicone. So it's super easy to use. There's no mixing. There's no, like measuring precise stuff. You just heat it up and it pours on, and then it is reusable like the Oyumaru, where once you make this mold, once you're done with it, you can just cut it up and remelt it and reuse it. It cured in like 30 minutes. The package said that you could put it in the refrigerator if you need it to cure faster, in case you're a person that, needs your mold right now. This didn't get nearly as hard as the silicone. It's very, very squishy and malleable. It does not feel like it will be durable for, 30 casts in a row. But since you can reuse it, it feels like once your mold starts breaking down, you just, do it all over again and that works. So I use the same kind of casting resin in all of them. This is, again, just a resin I got off of Amazon. I do not know if it's good. I do not know if it's the right thing. I do know that it is what I bought and it worked fine. So to use this, you just use equal parts by volume of the A and B part of the resin. That's a thing to keep in mind when doing this stuff, is whether they care about, they of course being the shadow rulers of silicones and resins, whether they care about equal parts volume or equal parts by weight. But much like the silicone, then you combine these two together and you stir them up, and you stir them very, very, very well. This is a fast cure resin. It cures in like 10 minutes, so you've got to work pretty quick with it. You can start feeling it heat up as you're stirring it. So quick pro tip that I learned, so you don't have to, I use this cup to pour stuff in and it worked fine, but it also got everywhere, which makes a ton of flashing when you're demolding from any of these molds. And so there's just a lot more cleanup. After I did this, I just bought a set of very cheap silicone containers that have pour spouts. I will say that both for the Silly Knot and the Oyumaru, resin probably isn't the best material to cast in with these, because both of these are heat reactive, where they will melt when they get hot and resin heats up. So my hunch is that it would definitely mean that your mold, you couldn't make as many casts out of a given mold before it starts to lose detail. So the Silly Knot was the most difficult to demold, just because the mold was so much softer than the other ones. This one, out of all of them, felt like the one that you'd be able to get the least amount of casts out of the given mold before it started breaking down. So these are the 4 finished windows. It's obviously very difficult to see any details in these, so let me do a quick paint job. So here's what they look like painted. I posted a poll asking which ones y'all preferred, and these were the results of that. So my thoughts on the pros and cons of each ones are, for Oyumaru, the pros were the cost. This is the least expensive option of all of them. It's very easy to use, it's reusable, and it's very, very fast. The cons are, this one had the lowest fidelity, it's not heat resistant, and you can only do press molds with it. For silicone putty, the pros are, it's easy, there's no cleanup, it has a pretty high fidelity, and it's durable. The mold really felt like it's gonna hold up for a while. The cons are cost. This was the most expensive of all of the options. You can only do press molds with it. It requires a scale, and it's not reusable. For silicone rubber, the pros are it's high fidelity, it's very, very durable, And it can mold 3D objects, meaning not just press mold like these. I know that these are sort of 3D, but you can mold in 360 degrees of the object. The cons are it's messy, it's slow, it's not reusable, and it requires a flask, which is the word for the thing that I didn't know earlier for the box that you pour the stuff into. Now I know. It's called a flask. And for Silly Knot, the pros are it's reusable, there's no mixing of materials, you get pretty high fidelity from it, and it's fast. The cons are durability. The mold definitely didn't feel like it would last very long. It's not heat resistant, and it requires a flask. And then for both a pro and a con is cost, because this has a pretty high upfront cost, but because it's reusable, you know, obviously if you reuse it a whole bunch, then the per use cost goes down. I decided for my needs, the Oyumaru is going to be best when I want something quick and simple, and the silicone rubber is going to be best when I want durability and detail. Make sure you subscribe to the channel if you want to follow along as I build these pieces of terrain for my Mordheim board. And if you want to get your hands on some of these windows, my Patreon's linked below, and I send some of my tiers stuff in the mail sometimes. So I'm going to be sending out some of these extra windows and doors that I cast. If you'd like to get your hands on those, that's a great way to do it. And thanks so much for your time and support, and I will see you in the next one. And by see you, I mean I'll look at this camera and my eyes will meet yours across infinite void that we all live in. Bye!